Mayor Weiss?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Feller?
Here.
Councilmember Keim?
Here.
Councilmember Rodriguez? Councilmember Sanchez?
Here.
And if you would please stand with me to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. And before we go to our proclamations and presentations, I would like to welcome Deanna Lorson as our new city manager. We picked her up from Walmart this afternoon, so at this time, Esther, if you want to do the honors.
Thank you, and if I could have members of FACO come up, as well as Brad Penner of the Oceanside Public Library. This is a very exciting proclamation in honor of Oceanside Filipino American History Month 2019. This is historic in Oceanside in that this is the first time this is happening. Usually we see our Filipino American Cultural Organization come before the council in June, just before the Phil-Am Cultural Celebration, and to invite everyone to this wonderful celebration. This year, though, the City of Oceanside has decided, on behalf of the Mayor and the City Council, to actually honor this very special month of October, which is the Oceanside Filipino American History Month 2019. And I'm going to go ahead and read this proclamation. Whereas Filipino Americans are the second largest Asian Pacific Islander group in the United States, third largest in California, and a significant special part of our Oceanside diverse community at about 9,000 residents, about 5%. Whereas the first recorded presence of Filipinos in the continental U.S. occurred on October 18th, 1587, when Luzones Indios came ashore from the Spanish galleon Nuestra Señora de Esperanza, landing at what is now Morro Bay, California. Whereas in 2009, Congress recognized October as Filipino American History Month in the U.S., leading to proclamations and resolutions throughout our nation by states, counties, and cities. Whereas the Filipino American Cultural Organization, FACO, was founded in Oceanside in 1976, beginning as a small cultural social club and growing into a large 501c3 nonprofit organization with over 450 members, providing youth education, disaster relief, preservation and promotion of Filipino cultural heritage, including Tagalog classes, cultural dance lessons, and choir group, and contributing thousands of dollars each year in scholarships to students and grants to organizations, including the Oceanside Public Library. Whereas FACO has a broad membership representing all regions of the Philippines, whose role in the community is especially important in Oceanside, where Filipino Americans have made vital contributions in healthcare, the military, education, the arts, technology, government, business, the economy, and the cultural richness of the city. Whereas FACO became the first nonprofit organization in San Diego County to create a 2020 Complete Count Committee to assist the U.S. Census and City of Oceanside in achieving an accurate count of all of its citizens, especially of the city's Filipino American community. Whereas this year, FACO will celebrate 44 years in Oceanside and 19 years of producing the Oceanside Filipino Cultural Celebration in partnership with the Oceanside Public Library on Saturday, June 6, 2020, that's next year. Whereas the Philippines, throughout its recorded history, has endured colonization, wars, natural disasters, and internal strife, and rose from the ashes of the Second World War to take its rightful place in the community of free nations and peoples. And the Filipinos and Filipino Americans, very devoted to freedom and the democratic process, are a people proud of their heritage, their culture, and the legacy of their forebears. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Peter Weiss, Mayor of the City of Oceanside, do hereby proclaim October 2019 as National Filipino American History Month in the city of Oceanside. Thank you. And Dora, can I give this to you?
Thank you so much. We are so proud as the Filipino community, and our job is to engage with other ethnic groups so that you will learn more about our history and heritage. Thank you.
I just want to say Dory Harris is the president of FACO this year, and she's doing a wonderful job. And as I said, so many years in Oceanside. Thank you so much. Can we give another applause for their great work in Oceanside?
Take a picture together. 2, 3. Oh, there we go. Perfect.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
At this time, we would have representatives from Sandag to come forward, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council members. It's good to be here at the city. I want to thank Mr. Feller for his service at Sandag. We're here with my team to talk to you about the 5 big moves, the next regional transportation plan. And a couple of things just to clarify, in case you heard it differently. We're doing a plan that is responding to meeting the state greenhouse gas emission reductions, but also to meet the federal requirement. Contrary to what you're hearing in the news that Sandag is taking money from this mode to the different, there is no money to be taken. Everything we're going to talk about today would require new funding sources, but it is something that this region need to discuss and debate in the future. So with that, I'm going to ask our planning director, Colleen Clemenson, to go over the 5 big moves. And then after Colleen and Ray Major finishes, will be available to answer questions.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council, for having us here tonight. So one of the primary reasons that we need to come up with a bold new vision, a transformational approach to the transportation system, is the fact that we are not meeting our greenhouse gas reduction targets, as shown by this chart. Even though our plans had indicated that we could meet the goals set where these green dots are by 2020 and 2035, if you look at the chart, you see everything is still going up. And this is a statewide issue. Why is this important? Well, we have to have a regional plan, a regional transportation plan that meets the state goals in order to continue to get state and federal funding to this region. And it's not just to Sandag, it's to local jurisdictions, all the cities and the county as well. So it's imperative that we have a plan that meets the law. And that's what really set the stage for putting together this bold new vision. What we're doing that's transformationally different, in our previous plans, we had a list of projects, we'd refresh the projects, refresh the costs, but instead, we're taking a look at what does the data tell us about the transportation challenges we have in this region, and what are the real solutions to addressing those transportation challenges, given new technologies and information that we have today that we didn't even have 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So starting with probably the easiest place to try to address our greenhouse gas emissions reduction really comes to the commute trip and how many of us sit in traffic trying to get to our jobs every day. So just starting with where people live and where people work in the region. That's what this figure shows. On the left shows the densest parts of the region where people live, and on the right show our employment centers throughout the region. The 3 largest employment centers in the region are Sereno Valley, Kearney Mesa, and downtown San Diego. But there's still a fair number of jobs up here in North County, all along Palomar Airport Road. There are a number of other employment centers. And even though when we look at where the jobs are and where people live, they're in the same location in the region, in the western third of the region, we know that most people don't live close to where they work. As we've been working on this and you start looking at how the land has developed, we really can connect. And we see how we can really connect this really through a figure 8, a fully connected transit network and a fully connected highway network that will help our region thrive for generations to come. So taking this data, we're working now to apply the 5 big moves, and I'm going to go through each of them. The first is a complete corridor, thinking about all of our major corridors in the region and applying what you're all familiar with, the complete streets concept. So thinking about the roadways as for goods, services, as well as transit, walking, and biking, and applying all of this in all of our major corridors throughout the region. The second big move is Transit Leap. So really taking transit to the next level. Transit that is competitive with driving. Transit that's high speed, 80, 90, 100 miles an hour. That's what we need to be competitive with the automobile. Fully grade separated, whether above ground or below ground, but not having to compete with cars on the road. The third big move are mobility hubs. These are the centers of activity that exist in most of our communities today. This is where we have higher density, mixed use development and bringing together transit and multiple modes of transportation into one location. An example of that, and many of you may have seen this in the paper, and we've been talking about it a lot with the Sandag Board of Directors, the opportunity for a major mobility hub at the former Spaywar, now known as Navwar facility, and working with the Navy to build a major mobility hub here with high density development. This would be a place that would have one connection, a people mover to the airport, and bring multiple modes of high speed transit to this location. And this is an idea of what that transit center could look like. The fourth big move are flexible fleets. And so again, thinking about the complete corridor concept, flexible fleets are smaller neighborhood type vehicles that help us make the shorter trips, maybe to and from a transit center, or shorter neighborhood trips using clean, electric, and ultimately autonomous vehicles for those trips. And the fifth big move is the operating system. This is the technology that will allow us to utilize our phones to know what our transportation options are, how much they will cost, and actually be able to pay for that using our phones. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ray Major, who's going to share more about the data we're using and how that's helping us really envision how the 5 big moves could be applied throughout the region.
Thank you very much. So one of the things that we're doing that is fundamentally different than the plans that we've done before is that we're using empirical data to really determine what the best opportunities are for alternative forms of transportation and how we can really optimize the entire system. So one of the things that we did first is to take a look at whether or not transit works in the San Diego region. And this map shows you during the peak travel time from Sereno Valley, which is our largest employment center, how far people can go in 15 minutes and how far they can go in 30 minutes, represented by the green and the yellow. On the map on the right, what you see is the same travel shed, but looking at transit. And so what you can see is that you can't even get out of the Sereno Valley area within 15 minutes. So transit really isn't an option for people who work in our largest employment center. And something like this, really kind of shows why 98% of the people are still using automobile, because we really haven't provided them a real option. So I show you this as an example because this is something that we're doing throughout the entire region to try to figure out how we would optimize a system. When we take a look at Sereno Valley, for instance, there's 129,000 people who work there. Each one of those blue dots represents the home location of one worker in Sereno Valley, and they're all moving to that green area. Their average commute length is 14.8 miles, and we create 3.5 million vehicle miles traveled each and every day, getting people to work and home from Sorrento Valley. And what you can see here is that there's this migration on all of the freeways that need to take place right now to get to that green area. So if we zoom in a little bit, some of the analysis that we did, and we've done this for, like I said, all the different areas, is what infrastructure is really being used currently? Where are people coming from? And so when you take a look at the 5 South, for instance, you see that 20% of the people on 5 South, their end destination is Sorrento Valley. That's where they're headed to. Across the 56, we see that 38% of the people are headed to Sorrento Valley. The 52, all the way out at the Mission Trails Summit, 14% of those cars are headed to Sorrento Valley. So they're crossing the entire Miramar Air Base to get to that green employment area. When we look at the 805, we see that 1 out of 3 cars is headed to Sorrento Valley, and on the 5 North, 1 out of 2 cars. So when you're sitting there in traffic and you're wondering where are all these cars headed, they're all headed to exactly the same place, and half of them are, right? So when we do this, what it tells us is where people are coming from. And then the next part of the analysis that we look at is, well, what kind of solutions can we offer people? So again, we're using data to really make data-driven decisions here. And so when we look at Sorrento Valley, we know that 20,000 employees live within a 5-mile radius, and we might be able to offer them a certain type of alternative. Like, for instance, Colleen mentioned flexible fleets. In a 5-mile radius, that might work. So autonomous shared shuttles to get to work. If we could take some of that capacity off of those vehicles off the road, we create capacity for the other vehicles that have to go through Sorrento Valley. At 10 miles, we have about 48,000 employees, but really when you think about it, that's too much for an autonomous shuttle. So there might be a different solution for that. The next thing we did is we looked at concentration of employees who work at each one of these employment centers. And what you see in terms of Sorrento Valley, the purple areas here represent where 50% of the total workers who work in Sorrento Valley live in those purple polygons. And you see there's a concentration here. There's one off of the 15, another one off the 52, and then a big concentration here off of in kind of the North Park downtown area. And if you remember from the earlier slide, a third of the vehicles on 805 are coming kind of from this area, and about half are coming from this area down here to Sorrento Valley. So what if we were able to offer another alternative, something like some type of high-speed transit? It could be a subway, it could be some type of rail. So we're not making any decisions yet on exactly what we're putting where, but this starts to help us understand the end location of where people are going and where they're coming from. Let me give you just a quick example of how this might work on the 78 corridor. There are 223,000 people who work in these green employment centers that include the ones up here in Oceanside. About 120,000 of them, so about 54%, live relatively closely. You see this distribution is significantly different than Sorrento Valley. Sorrento Valley was very spread out. There's much more localized employment over here. So our current plan, the 2015 plan that we have, calls for 1 HOV lane in each direction. And we know that by adding 1 HOV lane in each direction, what will end up happening is that we'll create additional VMT. The traffic will basically be backed up and be traveling at the same speed that it is now within a few months. And then we have the Sprinter, which we have increased capacity on this by double tracking. So this is what the current plan calls for. And what you notice is that it really misses where most of the employment centers are in this region. And so when we look at the 5 big moves, this is just conceptual. It's an idea of how this might be implemented. One thing we would do is to create this complete corridor that would be a loop around where the employment centers are. So it would be the 78 and Palomar Airport Road. We would tie that to some type of transit to allow people to get to where they're going. So many people who live up here work down in Sorrento Valley, and people who live south of here need to come up here for employment. So they would be tied together using high-speed rail. And then we would have mobility hubs. These would be these higher density areas where you'd be able to transfer onto a flexible fleet and take care of that last mile problem to get home. So by doing something like this, by implementing the 5 big moves, what we'd be able to do is offer the residents of North County here, like 80% of them, an alternative to the automobile. So when I started speaking, I showed you we don't offer a true alternative right now in terms of transit. With the 5 big moves, what we'll be able to do is offer people an alternative. We don't need to have everybody move over to transit. We need to get 10% of the people to use transit in order to free up the capacity we need on the freeways for the people who need to use those on a daily basis. And so with that, I'll hand back over to Hassan for any questions.
Thank you, Mayor, Council members. That's our presentation, and now we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Thank you for coming out here and presenting this plan, this idea. Out here in North County, way over here in Oceanside. Just want to remind you that ridership is low right now. You know that. And these great plans and ideas are very, very expensive. And until we can create incentives, we need our roads repaired. We need our freeways upgraded and improved, and we do not want more taxes, and we do not want a congestion tax. Thank you.
Just very briefly, I don't disagree that the ridership is low, because we don't really have extensive transit services for it to be any higher. But in terms of the roads, have to be maintained. But we can't just expand capacity. This is a way of life in California now. The laws does not allow us just to keep adding lanes to freeways. We need to figure out how we add capacity without adding lanes to meet the requirement we need to meet. But we can do that. We can add capacity without adding a lot of lanes by deploying technology, some of the high occupancy toll lanes like we did in the I-15, et cetera. But these are a reality, and many people don't want to accept it. But in California, you can't just add capacity simply because the laws does not allow you to do that.
My suggestion is focus on finding the right incentives for individuals. You know, even to the point of instead of throwing millions and millions and millions of dollars on infrastructure improvement that we hope people will ride, give them, you know, invest those funds into making it cheaper to ride, or, you know, giving back something to ride. Raise your numbers first before we spend millions on infrastructure that we hope people are going to use.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you, and thank you very much for your presentation. When the Sprinter first came in, I was back then a new council member, and transit has always been something that I was very much interested in. How do we get the most number of people who are going to the same place at the same time, you know, efficiently, effectively, something that that people in general would take, that it's not just poor folks that are doing it or people who don't have cars, but, you know, for the general public. And one of the things that I talked about at the time was, you know, the Sprinter is going from east to west, west to east, but is not going to major points of interest other than Palomar and Cal State San Marcos. So back then I inquired about the Tri-City Hospital, the courthouse, which is a major employment area, Maricosta for students especially, the mall, and even the California Performing Arts Center. And I was told that what the county would be looking at, either Sandag or NCTD, they would be looking at some kind of shuttle. And I see that Carlsbad has already started doing that. I worked at the courthouse for, you know, many years, and clients always would get there late because the buses, if they didn't catch the bus, they missed it by 1 minute or 2 minutes, the next bus was going to be like another hour or 2 hours. I remember one of the judges in the courtroom saying, you know what, I live in Escondido, and if I were to take a bus from Escondido to Vista, which doesn't seem like a very long way, especially back then, we didn't have as much congestion. He said if he took the bus, it would take him over 2 hours to get from point A to point B, and then to, of course, go back at the end of the day. So are there plans for making these shuttles that are perhaps electric or at least non-greenhouse gas emitting, something like what Carlsbad's doing with the shuttles from residential to their jobs? Okay. Is that something that you're looking at doing?
Thank you, Councilmember. First of all, I totally agree with you that if you look at the map, the Sprinter misses major employment center. And you might ask, why did we do that? Well, there were a line for free, the right-of-way rail line, and they said, let's make it
It was an
a
existing rail.
commuter. This is not the way to plan transit.
Right.
I reject that as cheap and easy is never going to get you where you want to go. Now, is there a way to, you said some trips will take 2 hours each way. That's absolutely correct. If you live in Oceanside and you want to fly from San Diego International and use the coaster, probably a round trip will about 4 hours. That's if the trains run that late when you land. If you want transit to be competitive with the automobile, and I agree with the council member, if you want it to be competitive, make it as convenient. Otherwise, don't waste your money.
Has to be convenient, yes.
It has to be fast, frequent, safe. The perception has to be different. Is it going to be easy? No. Is it going to be cheap? No. But can it be done? Of course. Many cities in the country and in Europe did it. So some people say, well, here in San Diego, we're spread out. The opposite is true, actually. In San Diego, more than any urban region, Colleen showed you where people live and where they work. They don't live and work in the same place, but we are in the third one, the western one part of the region. So we could build a transportation system, but we have to be willing as a region to pay for it and to give it a chance and not to judge it beforehand. And the bottom line is, if you don't like the system that people are going to propose because it's expensive, which is a legitimate concern, then you need to propose a different system besides adding to the freeways. You can't keep adding to the freeways in the state of California. The laws are very clear. And so you end up with doing the right transportation system. And I agree with you. Any trip that takes 2 hours round trip when it's only 20 miles is not going to work for a transit.
Right, so I think that if there was a shuttle system that would be cost effective.
Yes.
And again, we're talking about major centers where people go, at usually a maximum time. That's when maximum number of people are boarding or wanting to get to, point B.
Yeah.
So is that something that you will look at?
Yes.
Because we could really maximize the Sprinter even more so than now.
I agree. One of the 5 big moves is the flexible fleet. It's exactly what it is. Electric shuttles, flexible neighborhoods, to centers. Like you mentioned, we just opened one with NCTD and the city of Carlsbad, technology-oriented. Absolutely, that's one of the 5 big moves, and that's one of the things I think is going to work in San Diego in some areas.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Feller?
I'm glad you got that map still up there, because in Oceanside Boulevard is our industrial corridor all the way,
Right.
from Melrose all the way across, and maybe even some of Vista in that one corner over there. So everything on Oceanside Boulevard's well over a mile from that industrial corridor.
Right.
That is depicted up there. So absolutely we need the flexible fleet as far as us as going forward. We're just, as with almost everything, we're the last to receive anything up here. We get absolutely nothing out of Transnet at this point, other than it appears we're going to do the environmental for the interchange at 15 and 78 and 5. But no carpool lanes past the lagoon going north, and so I understand what our council thinks, which is why I voted the way I voted at Sandag. So we need to get some of this accomplished up here. The eastern part of the county got 15, literally almost completely completed out of this Transnet, or starting back in '97. We are, we have some serious issues going down. There's not a lot for us going down 78 at this point, other than Tri-City Hospital as a work center. The rest are just the shops. So little by little, we have to figure out how that loop actually works, if that's something that's going to be done in 10 or 20 years. So, and the flexible fleet, I mean, you see Carlsbad got that started with their little, I don't really know how it's doing yet, but those are experiments we can do here off the Sprinter route. So those are my comments for tonight. Thank you for coming up here to explain to the council what we're doing down there at Sandag.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Councilmember Keim?
Thank you very much for coming up. While I share my colleagues' concerns, I want to address the process and some concerns I've had with communication. With the history with Sandag and some of the credibility issues we've had over the years, I think this process could have been done a lot better. We could have instilled a lot more confidence in our community, and that was one of my disappointments, is responding constituents who didn't understand what was going to happen and felt as if their vote and their tax dollars were not going to be spent appropriately, and that's something we had to respond to, and that's where I'd like to focus my comments on.
I do want to just respond to this briefly. The comment is, what you've been hearing in the news is the tax measure, the Transnet, hasn't been spent appropriately. And I do want to say that these are the facts, and the facts should matter. The fact is that the original Transnet that was started in '87, renewed in 2004, first was overestimated in terms of how much money it's going to bring, and second, the cost of building a project was underestimated. So, right now, between today and 2048, when that measure is to expire, a total Transnet will be $6 billion between now and 2048. Out of that $6 billion, over 60% of it, $3.7 billion, is to pay the debt on the project we built. The remaining in today's dollar is $1.4 billion total between now and 2048, total. So there is a list of projects that was in Transnet, 14 projects, and there is $1.4 billion that won't even complete one major project. So just to have the honest discussion is, yes, there were a list of projects, and yes, there were big, important projects, but right now there is no money to build any of them. Most of the remaining money in Transnet is going to come after 2030. The only money that were in Transnet, the board programmed on the 27th, $600 million to do environmental and design work and to buy a car for transit. So I will take any responsibility for anything that the agency does, and I will take responsibility for what the difference in forecast. But I can tell you right now, the truth is there is no money to build anything major. Anything that we're talking about here have to come from new sources, and for that the board has to approve it, and for that the voters in San Diego have to say yes to. And so I would hope we will gain back the trust of the community, because the truth should matter, and we're trying to tell the truth.
Thank you. I understand many of these issues came before your administration, but outreach and community engagement is paramount, and sometimes perception's reality, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
And so, coming from law enforcement communications background, that's your job when you're in a complicated profession, is explain why you're doing what you're doing and instill confidence in the community. And I think this could have, there could have been clearer communications, instill confidence in our outlying cities that really rely on the major corridors of 15 and the 78.
Agree.
Thank you.
No other comments from the council, so thank you very much for coming up here. And if you think there's traffic out there, stick around downtown and enjoy a nice meal.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilman.
With that, we'll go to our consent calendar. Do we have any members of the public that wish to?
No items have been pulled.
Then I'm going to pull number 12, and I'll move approval of the ballots.
Second.
I'd actually like to pull 13 and 10. We can do the balance.
We have a motion and a second on the ballots. Please vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
Let's do item 10, please.
Is Ms. Dale in the room? Okay, wonderful. This item is to, have we already applied for this? Or there's just given authorization to apply for this Smart Water grant?
Councilmember Rodriguez, honorable council members. The application was due earlier in October, so it has been submitted. As part of the application, we're required to provide a resolution from the governing body. So that's what this action will cover.
Got it. And correct me if I'm wrong, we've received a few pretty large grants pretty recently toward the water infrastructure. Is that correct?
Yes, we have.
What were the rough estimates of those amounts?
So we received, you're testing my memory. We did receive a identical grant from the Bureau of Reclamation, $1.5 million for the automated metering. This is the second one that we're applying for. We received a little over $3 million from the Bureau of Reclamation for 2 wells and brine optimization. We also received, some state monies for Pure Water Project and Recycled Water Project. I think it's a little over $4 million between those, and we have a couple other applications in the queue.
Got it. When will the vote come before council on the voting on increasing the rates?
The rate increases are scheduled for November 6th, which is the next council meeting. It's a public hearing, so 6 p.m.
Got it. I did not notice in the breakdown the offsetting of the finances with all these grants we've received. So how does that play out from a budgetary point of view to, so I can explain to the public before I vote on a rate increase? We're receiving all these grants and it's lowered the expectations over the next 3 to 5 years. I didn't see that notated. So can you explain to me how that works?
Sure. So when we do the planning for the rates, we've planned in some of the revenues and a very conservative amount and what we anticipate to get for some of the grants. And we meet with our rate consultant every couple of months to update what our projections are. So we've updated that financial projection to include not necessarily this particular grant, but those grants that we have been notified of receiving.
Okay. So only estimates have been assessed when we're approaching a rate increase to the public. So it's not fully showing all the grants we've received within the last year. Is it showing all the grants we've received in the last year?
It is. We just updated it a couple weeks ago to confirm our assumptions for the rates that are coming forward in 2 weeks.
Okay, got it. Would you guys send that to me and copy to the rest of the council as well?
We can
just to
send
see the
you-
justification of needing to do a rate increase.
Sure.
Thank you.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Move approval.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
We can go to item 13. Councilmember Rodriguez.
Quick question on this rental assistance program. From my understanding, it's just covering a portion of either a senior or a 18 to 24-year-old's rent. Is that correct? Like, are they already living somewhere and then we start making payments? Like, how does the evolution work for this? Because I know we're struggling right now in finding landlords for vouchers right now. So how is this going to be any different than our struggle with vouchers?
Okay, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, Councilmember Rodriguez. This will operate very similar to our Section 8 rental assistance program. So the seniors that will be helped through this program will be taken off our regular Section 8 list, whether or not, they're not homeless people now, whether or not they'll remain in the housing that they have, these seniors, we won't know until they determine if they're going to remain or if they want to move to a different unit. Just like our normal Section 8 program, these are seniors that we anticipate will transition into the Section 8 voucher, so it's a way to actually expedite them getting assistance. As far as the youth will be participating in a program so towards self-sufficiency within 2 years. They are in programs, for example, with North County Lifeline or with the YMCA that have programs that are looking for subsidies to keep these kids on track so that they become self-sufficient.
Got it. Okay, so I know there's a challenge in finding landlords for individuals that get approved for a voucher. Is that correct? We're offering incentives, and I mean, is that still an issue? And I'm just wondering how
the vacancy rate is low in Oceanside, but our Section 8 holders are being successful in finding housing.
Got it. So this will just supplement that. I mean, it's money being given. I totally support it. I just want to add some questions on the functionality of it. So, okay.
We just so that you know, when people come into the Section 8 program for the first time and we're issuing that voucher, we strongly suggest that they remain in place before giving notice that they're going to move, because it is difficult. But some senior housing was freed up after the opening of Mission Cove, and there's always movement in the senior population, so
Right.
they should be successful.
Awesome. All right. Thank you.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you. This is an item where staff is recommending that the City Council approve the tenant-based rental assistance program to help approximately 10 seniors, homeless and or transitional aged youth with housing assistance for a maximum of up to 2 years, while transitioning to more permanent long-term housing assistance programs as part of the Consolidated Plan for Housing and Community Development. That's the name of the title. And I do understand the need to ensure this is more like a stopgap for people who have qualified and still waiting. This is going to help them, and this is going to this is very pretty much a vital part of the program. So I'm going to go ahead and move approval. Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
And then I pulled item 12, not because I wanted to talk about item 12, so I'm going to move approval of item 12. I just want to drag Marjorie up here. If you don't know, Margie does Irish dance, so she's going to come out in the middle and do it. No, this evening is Marjorie's last council meeting. So Marjorie, on behalf of the City Council, we want to thank you for your years of service and wish you all the best.
How many years, Marjorie?
Over 30.
Over 30 years. I want to second the motion. Okay.
So we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion approved, 5-0.
With that, we'll go to our general item. It's the introduction of an ordinance amending Chapter 28A of the Oceanside City Code regarding informal bidding procedures. Give me a red stapler. Mr. Thomas, you're up.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Mayor, City Council members. First, before we get started, I'd like to thank the water utility staff for helping with this presentation, especially Sean Harris, who helped write the staff report moving forward. This is really a collective effort between traffic engineering, utilities, and capital improvement. Tonight before you is code amendments for to adopt the updated informal construction bidding procedures, updated plans and specification approval procedures, and to update City Council Policy 300-1. Staff recommends that the City Council introduce an ordinance to amend Chapter 28 of the Oceanside City Code to provide updated informal bidding procedures under the Uniform Public Construction Cost Act, to introduce an ordinance to amend Chapter 2, Article 5, Section 2.23 of the Oceanside City Code, delegating authority to the city engineer to approve plans and specifications for all public projects, and to amend City Council Policy 300-101 regarding approval of change orders to public work agreements, changing the signature authority limit accordingly. As stated, the staff report actually has 3 different requests to it. Again, to amend Chapter 28 of the City Code, to amend Chapter 2, Article 5, Section 2.23 of the City Code, and to amend City Council Policy 300-01. For the first part, amend Chapter 28A. On December 19th, 2012, City Council resolved to become subject to the Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Act to allow informal bidding procedures for public works projects below a certain threshold. When the procedure was enacted, a mechanism was not set in place to update the act. This action would allow for future updates. Without the mechanism in place to allow for the automatic updates to the informal bidding process, the effective ability of city staff to bid smaller projects decreases as the buying power of the city's informal limits shrink. An update to the city code would allow for reduced administrative costs, more timely bidding of public works contracts, and encourage more local contractors to bid on projects within the city, thereby keeping our dollars local. Every 5 years, pursuant to the Public Contract Code, the Uniform Construction Commission considers material changes in public construction costs and makes recommendations to the state controller for any needed adjustments. The last adjustment was August 2018, and the State Assembly passed Assembly Bill 2249, amending Public Contract Code Section 22032 to raise the maximum values for informal bidding. The December 2012 limits were competitive bidding required for projects over $45,000, with the requirement of any project over $175,000 be received through the formal bid process. The latest updated limits in August of 2018 raises the competitive bidding requirements to $60,000 and the formal sealed bids for anything over $200,000. The proposed change to the city code will ensure the city's procurement policies continue to reflect the standards determined by the commission to be workable and to provide an efficient and a transparent procurement of public projects. This will reduce the administrative burden periodically updating the city code to reflect the changing costs of public projects. Moving on to the second item, amendment to Chapter 2, Article 5. Currently, the City Council authorizes capital projects 3 times. The first during the budget process, the second when plan specifications are brought to you for approval, and the third is at the approval of the construction contract. Delegation of the authority to the city engineer's office to approve plans and specifications will enable public projects to proceed with more efficiency. This delegation will ensure that the city continues to comply with Government Code 830.6 as it relates to design immunity. Should City Council delegate this authority, the city engineer will maintain its discretion to refer the higher profile projects to City Council for approval prior to bid. This change would not give authority to the city engineer to award contracts over $200,000. All construction contracts above this dollar amount will continue to be brought before City Council for approval, ensuring that all larger projects continue to receive additional public scrutiny. In addition to streamlining the bidding process by reducing the time required from design completion to contract award, the number of items requiring council approval will be reduced. The last item on the the agenda is to amend City Policy 300-01. The amendment to City Council Policy 300-01 will bring the city engineer's authority to sign contract change orders in line with the authority to execute public works agreements. This change in policy would amend the approval authority of the city engineer from 10% of the contract amount, or $25,000, whichever is less, to 10% of the contract amount, or $200,000, whichever is less. As an example, the new authorization would allow an increase in change order signature up to $25,000 for contracts valued at $250,000 or less, increase from $25,000 to $50,000 on contract values of $500,000, increase from $25,000 to $100,000 on $1 million, and all the way up to $200,000 on contracts exceeding $2 million. This change would allow staff to react more quickly to the unforeseen and changing condition as each project progresses, while saving significant administrative time required to process the change orders. This would also align our city purchasing rules with those of the state, align the city engineer's change order authority with the authority granted under 28A.28 of the city code, and streamline our change order processing. The recommendation is staff would recommend that the City Council introduce an ordinance to amend Chapter 28 of the Oceanside City Code to provide updated and formal bidding procedures under the Uniform Public Construction Cost Act, to introduce an ordinance to amend Chapter 2, Article 5, Section 2.23 of the City Code, delegating authority of the city engineer to approve plans and specifications, and to amend Policy 300-1 regarding approval of change orders to public works agreements. I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you. Do we have any public?
We have one speaker, Jimmy Knott.
Not.
Mayor, council members, Jimmy Knott, 127 Sherry Lane. I don't know how many of you can remember back far, but I can remember when the limit for any approval was about $50,000 years and years and years ago. But that's when it was brought forward, because the questions of certain expenditures in the public, they would bring these issues forward to the council. I have basically no contest to the amount that is being brought forward, except for I think the public has a right to be noticed onto the expenditures or planned expenditures. And there should be a reservation somehow planned or given an opportunity to the public to contest if there is an issue that needs to be contested, and in an expenditure that may be significant to a community within the city itself. Thank you.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you. Could staff respond to that? What will be the process for notifying the public of the requests for these projects that are under, what is it, 200,000, and what will be the process for the public to voice any concerns or objections?
Thank you, Council Member Sanchez, Honorable Mayor, City Council. Currently, with the process that we have in place, everything comes before City Council for
Right.
review and approval. Under the new process, for anything under $200,000, right now we have a process that's under $175,000. We can do an informal bid process. Part of that informal bid process is we still have to notify the the public, that these are these projects out there moving forward.
Is that on the website?
It is on the
Mr.
website.
Knott? Okay. All right, and it's also noted. It's also on the website. The process for anyone who wishes to lodge a concern or complaint. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. They can reach out to my office and speak to me, or to speak to the assigned project manager, and we'll do our best to answer the
Up
questions.
until now, it's been 175,000. Have you received a significant number of concerns from the public
Zero.
before or
Zero
after the bidding goes out?
We've not received any concerns
Okay.
on any project.
Well, that's good news. I'm going to move that we introduce the ordinances and amend Council Policy 300-01. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Thomas, I take it these are all projects that the council would have approved through the budget process?
Yes, sir.
So
Yes,
you don't just dream something up and go build it?
No, Mayor.
Well, pretty soon that will be streamlined like that, won't it?
Deputy Mayor Feller?
Am I on? Yep. The
You have a minute left.
years and, yeah. There's some sort of inequality here. Years ago, years ago, it would be the mayor's brother would go out in the city would pay for him to concrete a street or,
Not me.
Not this mayor, but mayors years ago. So the safeguards you have on this are pretty fair. And we're notified every 5 years of the threshold. Is that correct?
Deputy Mayor Felder, yes, that is correct.
And so are all our contractors notified of the same?
Correct.
Okay. I just want to make sure that those are the ones that are being informed so we don't make mistakes in who got a bid and who didn't and those types of things. So, yeah.
Deputy Mayor Felder, Honorable Mayor, City Council, part of the process we go through when we reach out to an informal bid is we try to make it as a large pool as possible. We work with qualified contractors that we've worked with in the past. If anybody requests a document, we go ahead and provide them with a bid document. Just because it's an informal bid doesn't mean we don't go through the same level of care and vetting that we would for a formally bid process. We still check the licenses, we still check the references, we still enter into a contract with them, we still obtain the required insurance to do the project.
So it boils down to the people that need to know in this process know, and as the mayor pointed out, the people are aware of contracts or projects in our budget already. So
yes, sir.
I mean, it's well publicized. So did somebody second? Sal second.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
Number one, what intrigued me about your presentation and why I support the formal and informal bidding changes is staff made mention in that presentation that it gives you the ability to expand to smaller contractors, especially on a local level. So I really would like to see a lot more local Oceanside contractors. If they're there, obviously you got to go as far as you can to get the quality you want. But just want to make mention that I saw that, and that'd be great to include some local smaller contractors. My question is with respect to the council policy change. Up to this point, this is giving authority to the city engineer to make changes. Is that correct? Like, who has the authority? Like, what is it, the city manager, or is it under the jurisdiction of the city engineer? Does that individual have to get it signed off by the city manager or the finance director? Like, how does that play out when a bid comes in, council approves it, right? Or it's been approved. There's already usually a 10% contingency, so they're going to that, and now they're going more above that. So it's starting to get a little bit, I wasn't prepared for this kind of a dynamic. Where does that engineer go? I mean, I get we want to be more proficient and be able to get things done in less staff time, but who signs off on that in the end? Is it just the engineer?
Thank you, Councilmember Rodriguez, Honorable Mayor, City Council. At the end of the day, city engineer would sign off up to that limit, but we would still have a full accounting at the end of the day. Anything above that would have to come to City Council for approval. Under the current policy, anything that exceeds $25,000 requires an appearance at City Council before approval can be made. And part of the issues that we have is sometimes the work has been done and the contractor has to wait several weeks in order to get reimbursed for that. This allows the contractor to keep moving, to get paid for it. With most contractors, things work very well, and they understand, okay, we can slow down, we're going to get paid at the end of the day, we're going to get our retention, we're going to get all the money owed to us. But there is the odd individual out there that will stop work until the change order has been executed. And in the construction process, if we stop the process for 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks in order to get a change order approved, and then we look at delay claims down at the end of the project, which are often contentious.
Okay, so contractor A's redoing a sidewalk, $2 million project. They have the built-in 10% contingency. They say, hey, concrete is more expensive than I thought. They go back to the engineer, say, I need $200,000 more. The engineer can just sign off on that.
We vet it first. We don't just take the contractor's word for it. We look at what the costs provided are. We make sure that the costs are reasonable first and foremost, and if we don't agree with the cost, we negotiate with them. You know, why did your concrete go up 300%? You know, we're talking to other people, we're finding it only went up 8%. So where's the dynamic? How did you arrive at your numbers? So that's part and parcel of the deal. We thoroughly vet every change order before we either sign them or bring them to council for review.
Got it. So if we, just question, how would not changing council policy 300-1 affect the others? Do they both have to be changed in order to, do they complement each other, or is this a different, and like what if we didn't change council policy 300-01? How would that affect the bidding?
It would not affect the bidding. It would not.
So we could still be proficient and bid and do all that. Council policy 300-01 is just if contractor A asks for $200,000 more, well, they'd have to come before us first. Is that correct?
Or more than 10% of the contract
Or more
value,
than 10%.
yes, sir.
Well, it's 200. I mean, 200,000. I get what you're saying. Whatever's lower.
Let me just interject real quick. Mr. Thomas, I'm presuming that regardless of any of the changes that we're talking about now, it does not authorize you to spend more money than was actually budgeted for a particular project.
Honorable Mayor, no, sir.
So if the sidewalk project was budgeted at $2 million and they wanted to go to $2,200,000, they're coming here.
Got it.
Mr. Mullen?
Okay, I'll go ahead and title the two ordinances. You also have the council policy in front of you, which I don't need to title. This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Oceanside amending Section 28A.28 of the Oceanside City Code to provide updated informal bidding procedures under the Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Act. You also have an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Oceanside amending Chapter 2, Article 5, Section 2.23 of the City Code delegating authority to approve plans and specifications for public projects to the city engineer.
Second, please vote.
Closed session. 5-0.
We'll go back to our closed session report. Mr. Mullen?
Thank you. The council met at 3:30 to discuss the following items in closed session. Item 1, conference with labor negotiator. The council did discuss the status of negotiations with the Oceanside Police Officers Association non-sworn. And gave direction, but there is no action under the Brown Act to report. Council also discussed item 2A, sub-items 1 through 3. Those are 3 litigated matters. The workers' compensation case involving Eric Anderson versus City of Oceanside. The litigation involving Edwin Duero Young versus City of Oceanside. And finally, the public construction case involving Glenn Babbitt versus Ray White Cement and the City of Oceanside. Again, there was discussion and direction on all 3 items. There's no reportable action at the present time.
With that, we have no public hearings, so we'll go to item 15. We have Mr. Don Bandy.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. My name is Jim Mannion. I live at 1820 Ivy Road for 20 years. As the City Council has done an outstanding job these past 20 years, I've never
Excuse me,
been
are you
here.
Mr. Don Bandy?
Don?
Don Bandy?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said Jim Mannion.
No.
Okay, sorry.
Is Mr. Don Bandy here? Guess not, so we'll go to Mr. Wally Stevens.
I helped somebody move. I pinched a nerve. Okay, Wally Stevens, 2323 Maxon Street, Oceanside. October 4th, I got a ticket for doing water dishes on the Strand. Since June of 2018, I've been driving the Strand 3 times a day, filling 1-gallon water dishes for the dogs. There are no locals left on the Strand. The locals used to do that. Sorry, I got a big mouth. Anyway, and there are no locals left. So as a result, I drive down 3 times a day and fill the water dishes. Keep them clean, keep them fresh. I had OPD knows me, the fire department knows me, the lifeguards know me. Everybody just buzzed on by. Most of the park enforcement buzzed by. This one young gentleman decided that you can't park here on my first water dish. And he said, I got to write you a ticket. I said, well, that's your job. Do what you got to do. So as a result, he says, is this going to stop you from doing it? I said, no, I got 4 more dishes to do. He didn't follow me and write me 4 more tickets. I've had a couple of the permanent residents and some of the condo people have apparently communicated with City Hall. They said they would, and they're willing to pay my ticket. I counted, since I got my ticket, I've counted 37 cars stopped either unloading their kids, loading up their gear, moving into condos, delivering mail, delivering pizza, Uber, and you lost $2,146 for that park enforcement officer not to be down there. I have a business license as a public advocate. To me, I'm being an advocate for the dogs of Oceanside. I would appreciate some consideration in this. If I've got to buy another special permit to fill water dishes, I'll do it, but that'll be at your direction. I am appealing the ticket, and I understand the procedure. So that's where I'm at right now. The last thing is city attorney's moved back in the back room right now. I got 2 letters from the city attorney accusing me of, quote, sexual harassment. Some of you have been around long enough to know that in the 90s, we had a young lady in maintenance who was being sexually harassed. Rita and I got on it. She ended up getting a settlement, going to work for the city of Vista, and the person harassing her is no longer here. If I offend anybody, please tell me so. I never intend to offend anybody. That's it for tonight. Thank you.
Go to item 16.
Item 16, we have 11 speakers. As I call your name, please make your way down to the next available microphone. Our first speaker is Nicole Smith, to be followed by Ken Layton, to be followed by Craig Leverson.
Do I just speak? Test, test. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Nicole Smith. I live at 4306 Kasana Way here in Oceanside. I'm an active duty Marine. I'm also with the Rural Mission Society Church of God, who strive to improve our communities overall over the world with love of Heavenly Mother. We are here today regarding the community cleanup opportunities. Each individual is the smallest unit of human society. When a person changes, his family will change, his community, city, and country will change, and then the world will change. With the love of Mother, who is a central figure in the family, we provide each person with a happy change so that those who have been changed can make the world happy together. We have been recognized by the world leaders from all over the world. We have received the UK Queen's Award for Volunteer Service in 2016, the President Volunteer Service Award in 2011, 2014, 2015, 2018, and 2019. And many more awards as a result of the Church of God contribution to the nation and the communities. Through diverse volunteer service such as environmental cleanup, blood drives, disaster relief, and food drives, the Church of God also support accomplishing the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals in cooperation with international organizations, governments, and institutions of many countries, communities, and people from all walks of life. When we give a helping hand with the mind of a mother who takes care of her children and polluted environment gets clean, our neighborhood anxiety turns into smiles. We truly want to contribute or continue to extend our effort here in Oceanside, and we wish to receive more information to know how we can help in unity with the city of Oceanside to enhance the city prestige. Thank you.
Mayor Weiss, council members, Ken Layton, South O, speaking only for myself. When I last spoke with you, I wondered how Council Aide Michael Murray, who represents this city council at various public events, could announce that he was running for state assembly when nobody really knew who the heck he was, and yet by his own admission raised $50,000 in less than 30 days for his campaign. He wouldn't say where that $50K came from. Gee, could it be from all the developers who have his boss bent over a barrel because they want to do business and build 600 houses on Oceanside farmland? And then last week he says, never mind, I quit this campaign, and makes no announcement about what he's going to do with the $50K. And guess what? He doesn't even have to give it back. And he raised that $50K before he could even file the papers to run, because the opening day is November 12th to file papers. The council aid system, as Deputy Member Feller admitted here before, can be abused. Of course, not every council aide abuses the system, but because it can be so loosey-goosey, some do. One former councilman was miffed that I did not mention by name the council members who hire their family as aides. Okay. Councilmember Sanchez does, and ex-Mayor Wood did. Nepotism can't happen in all the other city departments, but for city council aides, it's a family affair. And after I spoke last time, a current council member told me that Don Green and Ben Sullivan weren't the only council aides to do political stuff on city time. The guy who replaced Ben Sullivan as Jerry Kern's aide, Cliff Ireland, seemed to stop showing up for work last fall right about the time he was running for office in San Marcos. And then I was told about when the mayor got ill, his aide was told, you don't show up for work, you don't get paid. Well, guess what? She didn't show up and she got paid. Mayor Weiss answers his own phone calls, does his own research, and handles his own schedule, just like they do in Carlsbad, Escondido, Vista, San Marcos, Del Mar, Solana Beach, and Encinitas. Meanwhile, it pays to be a council aide in Oceanside. Don Green made over $113,000, including benefits and severance pay last year. This year, they will each get at least $80,000. And good old Michael Murray told us he got a clean $50,000 just to say he was running for higher office, apparently from his wink, wink, nudge, nudge connections to the city council. And now that he's quit, before he even started, he won't even say where it came from or if he's going to give it back. Let's open the windows, open the curtains, and let in some sunshine and be honest with the people of Oceanside. Thank you.
Craig Leverson, to be followed by Jim Mannion, to be followed by Amit Bakshi.
Dear Honorable Mayor and Council members, as well as city staff, my name is Craig Leverson, and I'm a lifelong resident of San Diego. Over the past 10 years of my career, I've worked with municipalities across California to bring solutions to their city halls and special districts. I even had the fantastic pleasure a couple of years back of bringing an interim harbor manager to your city in a time of transition. This is a core reason why my business partner and I have founded our company with a focus on public safety. The company that I now work for and am part owner of, Hitchcock Bird Removal, helps to assist communities by relocating invasive birds and installing deterrents to prevent them from returning to initial places of concern. Birds are not always thought of as pests, but the droppings that they leave, as well as the bird mites they carry, can lead to sicknesses in homes, businesses, and city properties. Often unseen, these birds can find their way into the ventilation systems and the top of buildings where airborne sicknesses such as histoblastoma, encephalitis, and some other 60 diseases can impact people's health. Beyond the well-being of your citizens, we also look to combat other problems to bird-caused communities, such as the unsightliness of their congregating in open spaces, the corrosiveness of their excrement, and other cosmetic problems that they impact your community with. There's also the hazardous issue of their nesting in and around power lines that can cause flashovers, impacting your electrical grid and potentially starting fires. Please email me if you have any further questions, and I'll be more than happy to provide a free evaluation of any sites that you may have within your city boundaries that are being impacted by birds. I will leave my contact information with your city clerk. Hitchcock Bird Removal offers a variety of deterrents because there is no one-size-fits-all solution for bird concerns. We offer services that can lessen the non-indigenous bird population in your community to let your citizens know that you've been proactive in addressing matters no one thinks of until they become a very costly problem. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. Hello, my name is Jim Mannion. I live at 1820 Ivy Road for the last 20 years. As the City Council has done an outstanding job this past 20 years, this is my first time coming to you to speak. So I apologize in advance for my clumsiness and my hearing earlier in speaking to you tonight. I am retired and living on a fixed income. So to generate a little extra income, back in July 2017, I started self-hosting a short-term rental, STR, rooms in my house, and registered with the city to pay the TOT. Since then, I've hosted approximately 250 guest stays, and there have been no complaints to the city or from my neighbors. I know the City Council and staff have been dealing with the STRs for many years, and a tremendous amount of work has gone into the recent adoption of the STR regulation. I am fine with everything in this new STR regulation, except for one provision that excludes my property because I live on an easement/non-conforming panhandle. To this day, no one can explain to me exactly what the specific issue is for excluding my property or for a way that I can address it. I watched a video of the 1016 California Coastal Commission meeting whereby city staff Jeff Hunt explained the panhandle exclusion to the commission, stating that panhandle is not necessarily a health and safety issue, it's just non-conforming. This doesn't help me understand the specific issue. I have also spoken with city staff Shannon Vettel, and she has suggested I email the City Council. So I did on September 25th of this year, and have yet to hear a response or acknowledgement for this email. So I'm here tonight to make a request that maybe one City Council member, subsequent to this meeting, can explain to me the exact concerns they have with the operation of my STR, and if there is anything I can do to address their concerns to allow me to operate my STR. God bless and thank you, everyone.
Amit Bakshi, to be followed by Nick Ritchie, to be followed by Yvonne Albright.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City's council members, and all the citizens here. My name is Amit Bakshi. I come from the Hoot Rides team. The Hoot Rides is a pilot program using neighborhood electric vehicles to get people around downtown Oceanside. We have 5 vehicles that are kind of like golf carts that can be hailed like Uber or Lyft for short trips downtown. We operate from the harbor all the way down to the border of Carlsbad, west of Highway 5. We're really excited about this opportunity to pilot a completely green, shared form of transportation. The city has been great to work with. Kyle Koger, David DePiero, Howard LaGrange, Annie Higgle, the whole Main Street Oceanside team. So we just launched last weekend. There seems to be a lot of excitement among the riders and the local businesses, and our number one priority right now is just getting word out. So really encourage you all to download the app. We're available in the iOS and the Android Play stores, and give us a try. Thanks.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council members. Nick Ritchie. As you know, the CUP for Brother Benno's is being discussed by the Planning Commission. But I really believe that we have a great opportunity here in the city of Oceanside to bring about an entire system change in the area of homelessness. I find it very interesting, and I certainly hope that you spend time on the Brother Benno's website. I always find it quite interesting and rather impressive when you look at since 1983, the meals served, the showers, and so forth and so on. But yet, using their own terminology, there's nothing here that indicates anybody being brought to any level of self-sufficiency in the area of homelessness. And indeed, when you look at it, the mission that they bring forward, they're meeting their mission. They're giving stuff to people. And I get that. But the thing is, this is our city. Okay? We are the ones who can grant the CUP. And wouldn't it, if we could just possibly think a little bit outside of the box, to put requirements, standards for the small group of people that they do service. We know that they're primarily servicing, once again, low-income folks. It's just totally helping with, once again, homeless prevention. They get an A+ in that, absolute an A+. Okay? But this, wouldn't it be great if we as the city could say, hey, can't you guys do this in a way that actually brings people to self-sufficiency, brings them to wellness? I've spoken to the director. I've spoken to board members. They have no statistics. They don't exist. All they're doing is giving stuff out. And of course, once again, that's their mission. But why can't we, with the CUP, actually say, we get it, but we want you to show that you're presenting programs that these homeless people must go through to hold them accountable so that they can become whole again. I want all my homeless neighbors whole and join the community in a dignified manner and not line up to get free stuff, breakfast at 7 a.m., a shower, and computer time, and an address. And that's it? No. We can do better. So I'm asking the city once again, please, as this thing's winding through the commission, to take interest in it. Take the opportunity. We can make a system change, one that has not been made in many other communities, to actually assist in helping people to become whole again. Thank you very much.
Yvonne Albright, to be followed by Jody Williams, to be followed by Jimmy Knott.
Mayor, city council members, city staff, and those in attendance tonight. My name is Yvonne Albright. I'm a 40-year resident of Oceanside. And today I'm here after hours of research, and the facts prove that a conflict of interest does exist, and Councilman Rodriguez should in good conscience recuse himself from the upcoming North River Farms vote. California Fair Political Practice Commission, the FPPC website states, in 1974, the voters enacted the Political Reform Act. In adopting the act, the voters recognized that conflict of interest in government decision-making by public officials posed a significant danger. Skipping ahead, it goes on to say, in fact, preventing conflicts of interest was of such vital importance to the voter that the act not only prohibits actual bias in decision-making, but also seeks to forestall the appearance of possible improprieties. While Councilmember Rodriguez has publicly stated there's no conflict of interest in this matter because he does not live within 500 feet of the project, the FPPC website states, however, if the real property is a commercial property and contains a business entity, the materiality standard under Regulation 18072.1 applicable to business entities would apply instead. Councilman Rodriguez runs an exotic fruit company, Puerto de Lomas Exotic Farms, from two properties no more than 1.4 miles and 1.06 miles from the North River Farms boundary. Puerto de Lomas Exotic Farms also has an internet presence at localharvest.org. It is not, however, listed on his 700 form. The properties are listed under real properties. He lists two LLCs, DR Real Estate Investments and Sleeping Indian Investments, as property acquisition companies. There are 5 types of interests that may result in disqualification: business investment, employment or management, real property, sources of income, gifts, and personal finance.
Good evening, Jody Williams, 31-year resident of Oceanside. I'm going to start off with a quote from John Adams, one of our founding fathers, that facts are stubborn things. Fact, Councilman Rodriguez should be recused due to the fact that he has business investment, employment, and management violation, fact of his real property ownership violation, and fact sources of income. Those are 3 clauses of the FPPC rules. The FPPC also states, unless it's nominal, inconsequential, or insignificant, a material financial effect is also assumed if it causes a reasonably prudent person using due care and consideration under the circumstances to believe that the governmental decision was of such a nature that a reasonably foreseeable effect would influence the market value of the official's property. We don't know how Councilman Rodriguez would vote on the North River Farm zoning change. However, as a reasonably prudent resident of Oceanside, we strongly urge him to recuse himself or to be recused by you, the city council members. He is in violation of the Political Reform Act. Planning Commissioner Louise Balma, another Morro Hills resident, recused herself and spoke as a private citizen regarding North River Farms. This refers to the integrity of the city as well as the city council. Earlier today, we provided a packet to the city attorney. Thank you for your time. We have packets for each council member as well as the city manager as well as the press. And we have full documentation of everything that we've mentioned, and it supports our call for his recusal. The North River Farms project should not be voted on until this recusal issue is resolved. Thank you.
Jimmy Knott, to be followed by Kathleen Lippett, to be followed by Teresa Masters.
Mayor, council members, Jimmy Knott, 127 Sherry Lane. A few weeks ago here, something that Councilmember Sanchez voted on, which was very important, which has been gnawing at me, and she is correct. I want to say that right off. The rest of the council was sort of taking liberty, shall I say, in your votes. You did not refer it back to staff, which I think was a correct motion that she made. And that was the disposal of surplus property, or what you declared as surplus property. And the reason why I'm bringing that to your attention is that the following meeting, you had before you an information shared with you about the Park and Rec Commission, pointing out to you that there is a deficit, a huge deficit, into the needs for park and rec land in the city. And there seems to be a miscommunication between city staff themselves and also the council and staff. Because if that piece of property could have helped out in this deficit, that should have been communicated between the property manager and the Parks and Recs department. Or it would have been communicated between yourselves and Parks and Rec. Because that is a key point. If you disposed of property that was necessary or could have been used by Parks and Rec for the benefit of the community, why wasn't it? You need to take and enhance our communication between the departments and yourselves in the departments, especially when it comes to city property, because you may be missing the boat. And I think that is where Councilmember Sanchez is correct. You need to take and quit missing the boat. Otherwise, you're taking and sentencing our community to failure. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is Kathleen Lippett. As a public health practitioner for 20 years, the goals of the county's Live Well initiative I support, and to provide smoke-free public venues, especially for children. My highest priority and goal is to advocate for public health policies that ensure young people have scientific facts about the harms that they are exposing themselves to by vaping. Whether nicotine or marijuana, they are particularly vulnerable as adolescents with developing brains. Marijuana industry's marketing campaign of normalization has led to a 19-year high record of adolescents who now view marijuana as harmless, especially vaping. Last Friday, the Centers for Disease Control reported the number of severe vaping-related respiratory illnesses linked to vaping marijuana jumped once again, and it will likely continue. It continues to rise daily. 1,500 hospitalizations so far and 33 deaths. The press release from the CDC I'm sharing with you states that THC is present in most of the samples tested by the FDA to date. Most of these patients reported a history of using THC-containing products. THC use has been associated with a wide range of health effects. 27% of these patients were under 21. 16% of those 27 were under 18. At least 1/3 of these patients were put into intensive care on ventilators with extraordinary hospitalization expenses. Most of them were in their late teens, 20s or 30s, and there were some older adults, and they were otherwise healthy. The consensus seems to be that vaping liquids containing THC may also contain contaminants. Both the cultivation and of marijuana and the manufacturing of vaping cartridges are being investigated. Oceanside has been considering marijuana businesses that would be manufacturing these vaping products that are very popular but dangerous and sold in marijuana outlets. Considering the severity of this public health vaping epidemic, I respectfully suggest that you consider banning the production and sale of these dangerous products. Please protect the residents that you serve. And one last thing, when these young people are released from the hospital, their problems are not necessarily over, because their lungs, when they do imaging of them, frequently look like those of a 70-year-old. Thank you.
Asters?
Mayor Weiss and everybody. I am here for myself. I've spoken many times, and I've always been respectful of both the police and the fire department. Often asking you, when projects of density are submitted and spoken about, why is there no input from fire department? I didn't get the kind of answer I expected, but it didn't stop me from saying, if we have density, you should know what the local fire departments can say, access, roads, gridlock. Anyway, I went to the Oceanside Senior Expo, and I was wandering around the booths. There was a booth for North River Roads with the fire station up there, right next to the Vista Community College Center booth. And I commented that the fire station is a sham. It's not staffed, it's not adequate, and it won't do anything. A man with a woman adjacent, wearing a fire uniform, cut me a new one. He called me every name you could imagine. He was ranting, outrageously angry with me, accused me of spreading false information, to what both booths were surprised and commented me, he's way out of line. I don't accept that. I could come here and speak about cannabis, about anything else. I feel respected, treated well. People who disagree with me don't come shouting, and not like the British Parliament. So why am I a public person walking around sponsored public area, subjected to being spoken to by a person who represents himself as the chief of the fire department? I was this goldsmith, silversmith before my first cancer. I went to 2-week-long retreats at a church camp in Paradise every year, year after year after year. I know the people in Paradise who are no longer alive. I know the facility no longer exists. I know they cremated in Paradise. I know in Rancho de Oro, I'll cremate too. See ya.
With that, do we have any council member items?
Yes.
Councilmember Sanchez.
Thank you. I wanted to invite the community, especially in the east side, and the council members to the rededication of Joe Balderrama Park. Joe Balderrama Park was started back in the 50s by the Chavez family, Lucy Marie and Joe Chavez. The Chavez Resource Center is named after this family. Lucy Chavez saw a need for a park. She saw kids playing in an empty lot where Joe Balderrama Park now sits, and she went to the city council and pretty much talked about and got past a park. Joe Balderrama, at the time it was called Eastside Recreation Park. In the 60s, Pete Magana, who was a very early settler in the East Side with his family, came to the council and requested that the name be changed to Joe Balderrama, after the first Latino from the East Side community who died during wartime. He was actually 19, died in 1944 in Aachen, Germany during World War II. We are rededicating the park on November 2nd. After some updates to the park, the city received a grant from the state for $1.2 million. City kicked in another few dollars to be able to have new playground equipment, new park benches, and grills, new lights, LED lights, and pretty much just making the park look better. The Balderrama family has been invited, and they will be coming, as well as the American GI Forum. As I said, Pete Magana from the American GI Forum was instrumental in getting that name changed. We also will have Congressman Levin, who will be present. That is on November 2nd, Saturday. That happens to be Dia de los Muertos. That's from 10 until 3 p.m., so hopefully you can make it. Thank you. The ceremony itself is at 11 o'clock. Thank you.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Thank you. You can see if it works. I want to go over a couple slides that I had from my recent town hall. I did a District 2 town hall. It's my second since I've been in office. And we had over 250 RSVPs. We maxed it out. Not everybody showed up, but we had a really big gathering at El Corazon. And the fire chief had a great presentation on fire safety, some new pamphlets they've put together, new updates to the website, some apps, just to be aware that we are in fire season and it is a real danger. And I also went over some topics involving homelessness. And I want to go over a few of those here, and everybody watching online right now. State and local governments are spending billions on homelessness. Many think more affordable housing, jobs, and rent control will solve homelessness. Well, in 2010, well before the opiate epidemic, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development reported that more than half of the homeless population was either in the throes of addiction or mentally ill. What is affordable housing? Let's go through it real quick. In our area in Riverside County, average rent of $1,525, that's based on the median income, or below, that's government definition of affordable housing, 30% of that income. The national average is $1,400. Go to that next slide. Affordable housing is not the problem when it comes to addicted homeless population, and I want to go into that. According to a U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development report, 45% of homeless people suffer from mental illness. A University of Pennsylvania report found that about half suffer from alcohol or drug dependence. In addition, a U.S. Conference of Mayors report in 2014 revealed that only 18% of the homeless are employed. Only 18% of the homeless are employed. That means that for most, the cost of housing when you're addicted and you're homeless, it doesn't really matter how cheap you make it. And it's really important for politicians to acknowledge this, that the large percentage of homeless addicts, it's because of mental illness and addiction. Some say we need more jobs locally. That'll help homelessness.
Point of order, do we have a time limit on this?
10 minutes.
No, it's actually 3 minutes, as I recall. And this wasn't agendized, this wasn't noticed.
I'm going over some items from a town hall.
Well, this is your opinion about things and, not really a report.
Do we have a policy? I checked before I started speaking.
This is opinion. And if we want to have a report by the staff, we should do that and have it noticed so that we can have people come and speak.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the only rule that we have in our code is that each council member gets 10 minutes per item. I don't think there's a specific rule with respect to council member comments on council member agenda items. We could look at that and verify that, but I'm not aware of any specific rule that's on point. I'll defer to the city clerk's office as well.
So going forward, we can do this, spend 10 minutes at the end. Each of us, that's 50 minutes, spend 10 minutes talking about our opinions about what how homeless crisis is and what we believe is going to address.
So typically, listen to your opinions for 10 minutes all the time, Esther.
I think typically the council member comments have been to discuss matters that have come up with your various committees. That's kind of the intent, but I don't believe it's limited to that. So if that's your direction to narrow the scope of what we could talk about during council member comments, we could certainly do that.
Okay, I guess I'll.
All right, we will continue. Some say that we need more jobs locally will solve homelessness. Well, right now, on a national level, unemployment rates have fallen to the lowest level in 50 years. That's a quote from ABC News on October 3rd. In San Diego, the jobless rate hovers near 20-year lows. We have plenty of jobs locally. But when 18% or less of the homeless population are just they're not working, it doesn't matter how many jobs you create. Well, just passed rent control on a state level. Our new governor just signed off on rent control. I don't know if you guys remember, back in 2018, rent control failed miserably by 18%. California voters made it very clear they do not want rent control. Well, we have a homeless crisis, and there's a Chicago mayor that had a famous quote, "You never let a serious crisis go to waste," and what I mean by that, it's an opportunity to do things you think you could not do before. So what do they bring up? They bring up rent control through Assembly Bill 1482, establishing rent control on a blanket state level, thinking that it's going to solve homelessness. First, the law ignores the fact that the state's epicenters of homelessness, Los Angeles and San Francisco, already have rent control on the books. That's even more stringent than what just passed. There's some more facts, but in the end, if cities that have some of the worst homeless problems in the nation have rent control, then obviously it's not working with homelessness and to solve homelessness. What we have is an unchecked addiction crisis. Just educate a little bit. Proposition 47 came out in 2014, cleverly labeled the Safe Neighborhoods and School Act, passed by California voters. It inexplicably reduced felony drug possession and felony theft to misdemeanors in an anemic attempt to reduce overcrowding in prisons. Right now, it allows for open drug use just about everywhere, including our neighborhoods and schools. Homeless addicts are now free to openly use meth and heroin anywhere with little fear of reprisal. Prop 47 has tied the hands of law enforcement by reducing the severity of drug possession and theft to a mere slap on the wrist. Amid the festering addiction crisis, police departments across the state are now rendered impotent. The utter lack of legal consequence for Prop 47 has made California a tremendous draw for addicts and dealers alike. More importantly, business is booming for the cartels across our border. According to the Courthouse News Service, the Sinaloa cartel, you guys know El Chapo is, and his son, that family from Mexico, leading player in getting drugs across the border, and it's coming across legal ports of entry. Right now, business is booming for the cartels because of a proposition brought forward by legislators here in California. There are no longer any meaningful consequences for openly using or dealing illicit drugs in our neighborhoods and in our streets. As a result, the homelessness issue has fermented into a full-blown addiction epidemic. Here's some quotes from a local police department. Here's a quote from a superior judge who said, "The court today concludes that the drafters of Proposition 47," let me go back to that, pulled a fast one on an uninformed public. So what am I getting at? We have to make some changes. Our police departments are working around the clock. They're working really hard to deal with the problems we have here in Oceanside, but their hands are tied. And we're just shuffling the problem around and spending a lot of money to do it. We need to make changes on a state level. And so I want everybody to go to this website and mark it down. It has qualified for the ballot. It's going to put teeth back into our judges, our district attorneys, and our local police departments to be able to arrest. If you're publicly using, you'll go before a judge, and the judge will give you the option of a felony in jail, prison time, or required treatment like it was before. And that's the intervention we need, and that's what we need to bring back so that here in Oceanside we could be safer and we can really, really impact the homeless community. Without having these changes on a state level, we're just throwing money into a deep, dark pit. So everybody go to keepcalsafe.org, get involved. If you would like to get a text, You could text the word Oceanside Matters to 67076, and you'll get that link texted right to you. Thank you.
And with that, we will be adjourning to our next meeting at 3:30 on Wednesday, November 6th. We are adjourned.